Welcome to Your Movie Rocks, an alternate ending podcast where all movies are great movies.
Even the bad ones?
Especially the bad ones. My guest this month, just like my guest last month, needs very little introduction because if you've been listening to us for a while, you have definitely heard his dulcet tones from all the way over in California. Brennan Klein, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be on the sophomore episode of Your Movie Rocks.
As you should be.
Oh, of course. This is new, uncharted territory for alternate ending. So it's a very exciting space to be in. I'm listening to Mandy. Mandy's the boss. I listen to you all the time, but you are the grand supreme overlord of this podcast.
Oh God, do I want this kind of pressure? I do. Yes, I do. Totally. So in case you did not get a chance to join us for the last episode, where have you been? But no, every show here, my guest will assign me a movie to watch, and we will discuss the movie, just like the 10,000 other movie podcasts you listen to, except that there is a catch, which is that no matter what, I am only allowed to say nice things about the movie. My guest can say whatever they want, but me, only nice things, and furthermore, only sincere nice things, not I loved it when the movie ended. If I have nothing nice to say, I'm lying because every movie does something right. Okay, so, Brennan, why don't you tell everybody about the movie that you have assigned me for this month?
Okay, so it's going to be really challenging because I'm actually not allowed to say it or think it, nor any of you. So it's going to be a tough record.
Don't think it, don't say it.
Yeah,
We're both going to turn into serial killers after this, in fact.
We are, unfortunately, but it will be worth it because we are talking about 2017's The Bye-Bye Man. Adapted from a chapter of a book. I haven't written. Oh, here it is.
I almost fell out of my chair when I realized this was adapted from something.
Yes, it is from a nonfiction book called The President's Vampire by Robert Damon Schneck, which is a perfect name.
That is both a perfect author name and a perfect book name. The President's Vampire?
Oh, yeah. It is a collection of American folklore stories, and the chapter in question is called The Bridge to Body Island.
Why am I not reading this book right now? Because I'm recording, but why am... Go ahead.
I read the chapter in question this morning to prepare for the podcast and can report back, and the book is actually quite bad. But this podcast
that doesn't make me want to read it less.
I know. I will explain a little bit more about that once we've talked about the movie a little bit. Okay. And I know this is not a chapter of a book podcast, but I will bring it up in brief just to give us some closure.
That
later
is
on.
Fine.
But yes, this is a January horror movie that was much delayed. It was originally a June horror movie, and I believe originally a previous January horror movie. Oh,
heavens.
Yes, it was directed by Stacey Tidal. She is an Oscar-nominated director for her 1993 short film. She is also the director of 2006's Snoop Dogg's Hood of Horror, which was unfortunately snubbed by the Oscars. And
people have no taste.
I know. And written by her husband, Jonathan Penner, who I know for dating Matt on Melrose Place. He was also an actor in the 90s.
He was also an actor in The Bye-Bye Man.
He certainly was. But yes, The Bye-Bye Man. It is, in short, a story about three friends, Elliot and Sasha. They are dating, and there is a third friend. His name is John. He is in a psychosexual relationship with the two of them. Elliot is perhaps violently jealous that the pair might have sex together, which might be a problem if you're all living in the same decrepit, crumbling house in Madison, Wisconsin, which they have just moved to.
And as it so turns out...
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. But yeah, so basically the house is haunted by a nightstand, basically. There is scribbled in the nightstand in this wallpapering on the bottom of the nightstand. It says, "Don't think it, don't say it," in this beautiful spiral. When he rips off the paper, he sees the phrase "The Bye-Bye Man" carved into the wood. He does say it, and then he begins to think it a whole bunch, and then say it a whole bunch. and tell it to a bunch of people, including his friends and a psychic and a librarian. And it turns out that thinking or saying the name the Bye-Bye Man summons this ghosty, demony, hooded, cloaked, pale, evil figure played by Doug Jones, who makes you hallucinate and then eventually murder people and usually yourself. Almost always. Or you die somehow.
Yeah, I think it was implied that if you say it, you must eventually kill yourself to avoid spreading the curse.
Yeah, generally, most people that we have seen become infected by this mimetic idea of the Bye-Bye Man realize what's going on and kill everyone they've told it to and kill themselves, and thus the Bye-Bye Man is the explanation for a lot of humanity's most grisly and terrible crimes.
Apparently. I mean, it's good to know, right?
Yeah, no, I it is really nice to completely abdicate our responsibility for violent crime. It's my favorite thing. But I have to tell you why I chose the Bye-Bye Man, right?
Indeed. Why did you choose the Bye-Bye Man?
So, I was really inspired by your episode with Tim. You know, the flagship episode about Sucker Punch aired a month ago. But because on paper, I was a little unsure what I was going to get from this podcast as a listener. But now, I think Tim picked the perfect movie. And that kind of inspired me to try and, like, pick one that kind of represented me, but also kind of fit that vein. Like, I feel like it's not a proper good, bad movie. It's a very dumb movie in a lovable way. Like, it's like a sick puppy, and you just can't help but, like, gaze at it lovingly a little bit. Or at least that's how I feel. I don't know how you feel. And The Bye-Bye Man is a movie that's particularly important to me for reasons I've tried really hard to grapple with and think about while I was preparing for this podcast. Because I remember I saw The Bye-Bye Man one time in theaters on opening night, and opening night happened to be the night of my friend's wedding, which I officiated. So after her wedding,
busy evening.
I did. After her wedding, my boyfriend at the time and I went to go see The Bye-Bye Man, still dressed up for a wedding in suits and ties and everything. So maybe I did marry the Bye-Bye Man that night. It's entirely possible. I was ordained in that county at the time. But I think the reason I was so excited for this movie was, again, just like the idea that the Bye-Bye Man himself is a meme, the incredibly repetitive trailer of the don't think it, don't say it, don't think it, don't say it, don't think it, don't say it, really gets in your craw.
I never ended up seeing the movie. So last night when I watched this when I finished it, I watched it in 2 parts. But last night when I finished this was the first time I had ever seen the movie. But when it initially came out, there was a period of time when I thought, I kind of want to see this because I had seen the trailer so many times. And because the trailer really was mimetic in that weird sort of don't think it, don't say it, don't think it, don't say it sort of way.
Yeah, it really got under my skin, and I obviously didn't think The Bye-Bye Man was going to be one of the great films of our time. But it's a movie that I just simply had to see. I had a feeling about it, like with The Greatest Showman, a movie that I deeply love, and might be a good candidate for this show at some point. Or maybe, I don't know if you've seen it.
I have not. I've never seen it.
Oh, I'm writing it down.
Excellent.
But I was just thinking about it. In that bit of the trailer, it's really the Dear Mr. Police, I gave you all the clues of its day. Like a piece of... Oh my
God, talk about blasts from the past right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like a piece of film advertising that really felt like it seeped into the groundwater.
And of course, then very unfortunately for everybody involved, it quickly and easily became don't think it, don't say it, don't see it.
Yes, exactly. It did make money. It made its money back. It technically earned a profit. But it made like $30 million, which is not particularly impressive. Okay,
well, still, that's nice for the people who made this. They got paid.
Yeah, they certainly did. One of the great things about the Bye-Bye Man. But yes, that is why I chose it, and I hope I made the right call.
Most excellent. Okay, well, I loved this movie, and To me, this movie belongs in an extremely specific horror niche. And it's a horror niche that I don't think we talk about often enough.
Okay,
and
hit me with
that is the gateway horror movie for teenagers who scare easily.
Ooh.
So
and that's so important.
It is. So to explain what I mean, everybody, or at least like, okay, not everybody, every of a very particular type of teenage girl, and I suspect also many types of teenage boys, went to horror movie slumber parties when they were in high school, especially like of our generation in particular, and probably the ones before it. I don't know if they still do this. But when you went to a horror movie slumber party, there was often the friend who didn't really like horror movies because they got scared easily, but didn't want to admit that they got scared easily because that would make you uncool in this particular group. And so this friend would either kind of have to like frequently excuse themselves or watch through their hands or eventually just like admit, I don't really want to be doing this. And so there was a real need, there is a real need for horror movies that still like want to be real horror movies. Like we're not talking about like hocus pocus or fake horror movies here, but that are only scary enough to scare the most squeamish person in the room. And I think that is actually a very important niche for movies to fill because there is an audience for that kind of movie, and all audiences deserve to be served. And so this to me is, I don't know that it was necessarily trying to fill that niche, but I do think that it fills that niche successfully. So there are movies for which I can envision no audience, basically. Like, I cannot name the person who would want to see this movie. For this one, I have absolutely no trouble, like, thinking of several very specific people in my life at different times for whom a movie like this would have been perfect. And the first thing that I really enjoyed, as it so happens, just like with Sucker Punch and Tim, was the opening sequence.
Hey, kick off with a bang.
Yes, so in the opening sequence, which is shot in broad daylight, and broad overlit daylight is really underused in horror movies.
Absolutely.
Like, it's the Midsommar effect. Like, not quite that much, but like, extremely bright light can be very scary, just like extremely dark. And in this case, we have a, surprise, surprise, mass murder committed in a very nice-looking, like, middle-class neighborhood by a man wearing a hideous sweater vest.
And played by Leigh Whannell, the
writer
of Saw and Insidious, yeah.
Who I did not immediately recognize because he's wearing very un-Leigh Whannell type glasses. Though when I thought about it, I was like, oh, that is why he sounded so weird, because he is once again trying to hide his actually quite thick Australian accent
yeah.
and conceivably sound like a man who could live in Wisconsin. But so anyway, Leigh Whannell is wearing a sweater vest and is going through his neighborhood demanding to know if you told anybody of each of the people he shoots, and each of them has apparently told somebody, whatever it is. We, of course, don't know at this point. And so he shoots them when he discovers this. And then right before this cuts to the title, we see him muttering the "don't think it, don't say it, don't think it, don't say it," as he stalks over to another of his neighbor's house with the gun. It opens with a bang. I appreciated it. Despite the fact that I kind of knew the premise of the movie, and of course I already knew "don't think it, don't say it," I was like, is this what we're going for? Like, is this going to actually be like a broad daylight, quiet, upper middle class neighborhood, how could this happen to such nice people kind of movie? It did not turn out to be that way, but I was very excited based on the opening scene.
Okay. I guess that sets you up for a letdown a little bit. But yeah, no, it's a very splashy opening. And, you know, that's the thing, that it's hard to make an opening sequence like that for a movie because movies have to be advertised. Movies have to have titles. And so much of the time, like, you know there's a vampire in this movie, but the opening scene maybe says, like, ooh, this person with the weird teeth, what are they up to? And has to ask that question and pose it as if you don't know.
It's like, just in case a person who never saw the trailer is watching this movie, here is an opening scene for that person.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, I'm so glad you like that scene, and I do want to bounce back a tiny bit what you're saying about the kind of gateway teen horror thing. That's something that I learned to respect more as an adult. Because like I got into horror I think like the summer after my sophomore year of high school. So I was a little older than normal, or not normal, a little older than like slumber party age, but like by the time I was actively having slumber parties with high school friends that were horror slumber parties, we were watching like Teeth. Like yeah. So we were a little more intense.
You were getting edgy.
Yeah, exactly. But I went to go see that Blumhouse movie, The Gallows, the found footage.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I thought it was so dumb.
It was.
And it was. And I was complaining about it to my boyfriend afterward, and I was like, oh my God. But then this teenage boy came out after us, and he turned to us and he was like, oh my God, wasn't that the scariest thing you've ever seen? And he was like so excited. And my initial instinct was to be like, oh my God, dumb kid. But then I thought about it and I was like, no, he just had a really profound experience with something that's going to expose him to much better things down the road. And that's important.
Yeah. It's like I didn't think Shakespeare was going to come into our conversation about the Bye-Bye Man, but it's like the famous...
it was going to. So
like
is Rilke.
Fantastic. It's like the famous scene in The Tempest where it's, "Oh, brave new world that hath such people in it," and Prospero says, "'Tis new to thee." And yeah, it's a new experience for you. It's not a new experience for me now. Because again, by the time I was in my teenage years and doing horror movies, I would have been in the one at the parties who was like, "Let's watch The Shining." Like,
yeah, exactly.
Let's watch Mulholland Drive. So this was not marketed at me as a teenager. But on the other hand, like, I absolutely have friends who would have watched large portions of this through their barely open fingers. Because everybody has a different scare threshold, and I've become a much bigger believer in big tent horror.
Yes, absolutely. And there's something kind of itchy about the idea of the Bye-Bye Man. The idea of, like, if someone tells you, don't think about an elephant, you're going to think about an elephant. Yeah. There's no way to purge yourself of the Bye-Bye Man once he gets into your system.
The fact that you are saying "don't think it, don't say it" means that you are in fact thinking it and saying it as we speak.
Yes, and actually, since we are getting so high-minded, that reminds me of Dangerous Liaisons, which I am currently reading. One of the ways that the Marquise de Montreuil, or however the fuck you say it in French, I
don't know.
I wouldn't
Gavin.
try. See, that's the thing, because Gavin will criticize what I say, so I'm not
Yes.
even going to try, because I'll learn how to say it from him. But one thing that she specifically does to make someone fall in love with him is to help her, like, try really hard not to think about him, which is the way to ensure that you are going to think about him.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's the Bye-Bye Man connects us all. But I think that's very potent, especially if you're sensitive to horror, because you are going to be thinking about it.
Yes.
And you're like, is he going to get me? And if you're sensitive to that, you're not going to sleep that night. It's just, regardless of how well the movie works, and it works well in some ways and less well in others, it's going to get under your skin.
Yeah, very much so. In part because of the tagline that is all over the poster even. Like, the tagline really works better than it has any right to work. Before we get too far into that, though, we have to get to further exposition, which is that the unacceptably shitty college student house is portrayed so well in the opening parts of this movie. I love that choice of setting, and I love the design of the house. Now, the design of the house is clearly very purposeful in that there are, like, tiny doors all around that are impractical for literally everything except for a freakish flayed hellhound to eventually poke its little head through. But still,
although I will say, having stayed in an Airbnb in the Wisconsin area, I feel like tiny doors were kind of a thing I was encountering.
Oh, fascinating. Okay, so maybe this is just a Wisconsin thing. We're missing all the regular Wisconsin people, but maybe they can tell us about their tiny doors later. But on college campuses, unacceptable student housing in which no one over the age of about 24 can comfortably exist is absolutely a thing. Like, everybody who has been to college has lived in a house like this, or had friends who lived in a house like this, where, like, there is 50-year-old wallpaper peeling off the walls. The floors don't just creak, but like groan under every step that you take. There's like obvious mold growing in the seams between the roof and the walls. The basement smells like unmentionable substances. And like you can kind of smell the basement in this movie through the TV screen. And just they're going around this house, and Sasha is looking very skeptically at everything, as she well should. And I'm like, on the one hand, yes, this house is haunted, and on the other hand, this is just a perfect college student house that is getting me to think about how terrible college student houses typically are, and how probably they're all haunted by something.
Yeah, if not haunted, haunting, certainly. Yes. Yeah, I mean, they are lucky that this house came furnished when they bought it, because otherwise, this is the type of place where their couch would be a cardboard box.
Indeed, yes.
Like, it very much, it is just this repulsive kind of environment for them to be in, which is great for horror.
Yes, like, okay, you have a haunted nightstand, but at least you have a nightstand.
Yeah, exactly, and it's not just like a barbell tipped on its side.
Yes, be grateful, children. You could be sleeping on stacks of used pizza boxes.
Yeah.
And it is also established that the only reason they eventually have things like decorations and curtains is because they have a single heterosexual woman living in this little polycule here.
Yeah, which to get too binary, but at that age, like, you gotta have one of those if you're living in a house.
Yes, you do. There's gotta be one, because otherwise nobody's going to vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell she's the one who vacuums and washes the dishes.
Yeah, but things go awry so quickly. She becomes ill from Biberman.
She does. Yes. She gets an extremely non-specific cold-like disease that actually kept making me think of COVID, because it started with a terrible cough, and yet her boyfriend Elliot, despite the fact that she has this terrible cough, keeps like kissing her with tongue in public.
Oh yeah, it was disgusting. I mean,
disgusting, cute. What do you want?
I disagree, but I mean, I'm a huge germaphobe. But it was a lot. Like, she has been actively sick for a week, and he's just like, "Hello, baby."
He's very accepting of their situation.
He really is. Anyway,
but in the meantime, even before she gets sick and the Bye-Bye Man is introduced to all of our characters, we in fact see the Bye-Bye Man for the first time, because during a party, which is for some reason, despite the fact that it's like a college, not actually frat, but definitely frat party, Elliot's niece, who's like 9 years old, is at this party and is wandering through Elliot's new unacceptably shitty house.
Yeah, can I roll that back one really quick second?
Mm-hmm.
His niece, who is the daughter of his brother, obviously, or daughter of one of his siblings, but in this case, it is his brother, played by Michael Trucco.
Yes,
who's a character actor you will know if you like Mike Flanagan or
Indeed.
the Wishmaster movies, because he's in the fourth one.
Indeed.
But
I definitely raised my eyebrows a bit when he showed up on screen.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, him and his wife and the daughter show up, and they're like, "Oh, I hope we're not too early." And it's clearly the dead of night when they arrive, so I don't know exactly what time they were supposed to get there.
They also appear to show up with like copious amounts of booze, and I cannot decide whether, what's his name, Virgil?
I think you're right. Another literary reference.
I think so. Yes, Virgil, Michael Trucco. I can't decide whether he is the best older brother or the worst older brother in the world for this reason.
Mm-hmm. He's certainly not among the great fathers.
No, perhaps not. So while his child is wandering through the house and discovering mysterious dropped coins in Uncle Elliot's room, we get our first glimpse of the Bye-Bye Man, who is just like hanging out in a corner, kind of looking like a Halloween costume that is hanging on the wall. And honestly, I dug this moment. It's one of the moments when the camera stands still, and universally in this movie, my favorite moments are the ones where the camera is actually standing still and just letting things happen around it. And you see this girl just like wandering through her uncle's room, being kind of a nosy little snoop. And the thing that I really like about it is that, like, if you are paying attention, you will eventually notice that the Bye-Bye Man is there. And if you know anything about the movie, you will guess that it's the Bye-Bye Man. But the possibility is left open that you will not notice that he is there. That your eye will simply not travel to that area of the screen because it is not one of the areas where things is happening. And this sets up a pattern early in the movie of, like, the Bye-Bye Man appears, but you have the option of not seeing him there. There are multiple times when this happens where, like, he is there, but very much out of focus, and it turned into almost like a fun little puzzle for me while I was watching this, like, spot the Bye-Bye Man. Where's the Bye-Bye Man? Where's Waldo in this scene?
Yeah, and they do like to Babadook him, too, in the sense of, like, there will be these coats hanging on hooks. There's like, is that the Bye-Bye Man's cloak or not?
Yes.
They do have some fun with that.
They do. And sometimes just, like, he's in a poorly lit area of the screen. Or is that the Bye-Bye Man? Or is that Sasha wandering around in her underwear again? Who knows?
Yeah, and again, trying... Yes, okay, I'm really glad to hear that. And I believe one of the reasons you were perhaps eager to watch this is because of Doug Jones.
Yes, it was.
Are you? Do I imagine that? I mean, there are so many reasons to love Doug Jones.
There are so many reasons to love Doug Jones. Okay, yes. So Doug Jones is very much on the list of actors whom I love unconditionally, and he probably has he is probably the most inversely proportional how much I love him to how much I frequently love the projects he is in. But even if he is in a project I don't like, I will always love him. So if you have seen Doug Jones, you have probably seen him under large amounts of prosthetic makeup and possibly bent into very strange shapes and always much taller than everybody else on screen. But one of the very few good things that happened as I was watching Star Trek Discovery was that in I want to say the second season of Star Trek Discovery, he mostly plays an alien who, like, has lots of prosthetic makeup. But there's an episode where he gets to act out of makeup. Like, he briefly turns into a human character. And that is where I discovered that Doug Jones can make me burst into tears by moving his eyebrows the right way. He was blessed with an unbelievably expressive face and body. And he has honed his use of both of those tools extraordinarily well. So what I'm saying is that he's a really, really good movie monster. I kind of wish he had more to do here, because a lot of what he does is, stand around and look menacing as the Bye-Bye Man. But when he stands around and looks menacing, he is giving 11 out of 10 to standing around and looking menacing.
Absolutely.
And so I am always here for Bye-Bye Man looking menacing, even if sometimes I want the Bye-Bye Man to be doing other things as well.
Yeah, I don't really know that he does. He is kind of the circus master of hallucinations and people committing crimes rather than an active monster. So he is leering over the process more than he is, like, goring people or running around and doing things.
Yes, he's got a good little smile that unfortunately we only get to see a couple of times, but is this very, like, knowing little half-smile leer that when it's lit in the right way, it's like, oh, yes, we are on the same wavelength right now, Doug Jones.
So what else do you have? What else did you love about this movie?
So the Bye-Bye Man is, of course, introduced into the house again by Elliot discovering the haunted nightstand. But if Elliot had simply kept this knowledge to himself, it would have been fine, and the knowledge of the Bye-Bye Man would have died once again with his silence. But after the party, where Virgil, I think that's his name, supplies all the alcohol, Sasha has this friend named Kim, who is, she's the weirdo of the group. She looks like she wandered in from the craft or from a craft fan party. And she wants to do a psychic cleanse of the house for them. So she's going to hold a seance. And it is during the seance that the Bye-Bye Man is brought to life for everybody by Elliot mentioning his name. He thinks it and says it. Oh dear. I really like the seance. I thought the seance was genuinely tense.
And that's hard to do.
It is, because among other things, the seance is a terrible idea. Don't do a seance in an actual haunted house. Come on, Kim, you're supposed to be good at this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they don't quite know that it's haunted just yet, but she's starting to get feelings.
And it is definitely left ambiguous as to how much psychic power she actually possesses. Because there are times when she seems to know things that at the very least it would be very difficult for her to know if she did not have some ESP powers. I think it also helps that at least in the early part of the movie, Jenna Cannell, who plays Kim, is by far the best actor in the main cast. And she sells the growing discomfort that the character has with the seance and with the atmosphere in the house as it continues, up until Elliot finally says the name of the Bye-Bye Man, and the seance has to be cut short. But especially considering that we all know how it's going to go, because we all know the house is haunted at this point, they do a remarkable job of sustaining the tension in places where they should not by any right be able to.
Yeah, absolutely. And since touching on the cast, since you love this movie and obviously can't say anything bad about them.
Indeed.
Cressida Bonus as Sasha is delivering one of the most vacant horror movie performances. It is a little bit punishing, but I think mostly everybody acquits themselves at about the level that you might expect from a cast of pretty young people.
So here is what I will say: the acting in a great many classic and objectively wonderful at what they do horror movies is atrocious.
Yes. Great
acting is not required for a good horror movie.
No, not at all. But
in fact, sometimes it can be detrimental to a good horror movie.
Sometimes. These people largely have had careers. Like Douglas Smith, who plays Elliot, he was in Big Little Lies. He was in the second Percy Jackson movie, which is not something anyone really wants on their resume. But
it was a big budget movie, and I'm sure he made bank off of it.
Yeah. And the guy who plays John, the kind of third in their
Lucian something? Lucian something French?
I would say Lucien Leviscount is what I would say.
Lucien Leviscount. That's a good name. That sounds like it should be the name of a vampire.
It does, or someone in Dangerous Liaisons.
Indeed.
But yeah, he's on Emily in Paris now, or he was and he left and he's back, something like that.
And like we talked about Lee Wanell, but we have not even talked about the really big names that randomly show up halfway through this movie.
Yeah, see, it has. I wanted to talk about that too. It's got a wild adult cast.
It does. The funniest meta moment while we were watching this was my husband was in the room with me and was kind of watching it over my shoulder periodically.
Love
and
that.
During the scene where there's a scene late in the movie where, Kim gets hit by a train, and it is thought that Elliot may have had something to do with the circumstances that led to her getting hit by a train. He did, but not in the way they think so. And there's like a tough-talking cop who shows up to interrogate him, and my husband looks at the screen and goes, "So whose budget Carrie-Anne Moss that they got here?" And we had to be like, no, that's actually Carrie-Anne Moss.
And the budget in this situation is that they got her for 2 scenes. Or 3 scenes, I think.
Scenes,
2.5 scenes, really.
Yes, and then the other budget is that they got Oscar-winning actress Faye Dunaway for one scene.
Faye Dunaway as Widow Redman, which is such a great name.
As Lee Wanell's husband.
Yeah.
Or wife.
Yeah, wife,
not husband, wife. Yes. As Lee Wanell's wife.
Yeah, Faye Dunaway just showing up in this movie. And she has 2 of the best moments in my mind. So spoiler alert. But, Bye-Bye Man is inflicting these hallucinations. But one of these hallucinations is that she is stoking the flames in a fireplace and just catches on fire. Just completely out of nowhere. And it's quite shocking.
It is.
Yeah. And also, I do love when Elliot is seeking help and aid and guidance from her. Faye Dunaway just hands him a gun and she's like, "Kill your friends, kill yourself, then you're good."
Yeah.
And she's just so calm and matter of fact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go Faye Dunaway.
I also love that he does not even react with any particular shock to the news that to fix this problem, he will need to murder everyone he loves and then himself.
He kind of already knew.
It's true. He was figuring it out at that point. Mm-hmm. Like, I even kind of love that the CGI fire effect is so bad, because in context, that is when Elliot figures out that he has some control over the hallucinations. And so if there is something he was going to figure out is a hallucination, it should be the one that he hallucinates badly.
Yeah. It's the Biberman's power is starting to break down ever so slightly.
Yes, it is losing its power over him and thus losing its ability to make him suspend his disbelief.
Yeah, and the thing is, so Elliot does once really quickly lose that skill that he adopted, but I actually think there's a pretty good reason for it. In that he is so protective of his relationship with Sasha and so jealous of the idea that John and Sasha will get together that the Bye-Bye-Man just feeds him another hallucination of that happening, and he's instantly back on buying what he's seeing.
The Bye-Bye-Man is like, I gotta up my game, and figures out how to up his game.
Yeah, like, truly, if Elliot just let John fuck his girlfriend and, like, was chill about it,
it would solve so many problems.
Yeah, it would have solved everything.
Maybe they'll even let you join in.
Yeah, I mean, that is a hot sandwich right there.
And, like, John is clearly kind of into him, as well as being into his girlfriend. There's a way to make this work.
Oh, yeah. No, you simply must ask. That's it. Like,
Speaking
you
of
need
which,
to put it into words, yes.
As long as we are on this topic, the single best jump scare in the movie is the sudden appearance of a hot naked man.
Yes, there's actually I am curious which moment you mean. But so there's the moment where we get the 3 butts on the train track.
It was not that one.
Not that one. That one's very surprising.
That one is quite surprising. It comes very much out of nowhere. No, I'm thinking about, God, why can I not remember the context of this scene? I must have written it down somewhere in my notes.
Sorry, so is it she's sick in the morning and she hallucinates that Lucien Le Viscount has come out of the shower not wearing anything and he's like, hey, come over here.
Yes, that is the moment.
Yes, okay.
Like, that is one of the moments when I actually legitimately jumped, and then I realized Stacey Tidal just, like, gave me a little frisson with a hot naked man.
Yeah, which is unusual to say the least. It maybe has not happened before.
I don't typically think those are scary.
Yeah. Yeah, great work to her. Great work to...
Well done, and fie on all the people who said the Bye-Bye-Man did nothing new with its premise.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I will say, so just for context for those listening, we throughout the movie get these kind of cutaway shots of just a train kind of approaching the camera on the track and being very spooky. And that is also one such hallucination involves what are very clear butt doubles for the 3 main people on the track facing away from the train. And they're all flexing the hell out of their glutes. Their butts look crazy. Like they're
really do.
Yeah, they're like topographical maps that are really unsettling. It's like that's just not really what a butt's supposed to look like, but it's like good work to the butt doubles, the trio there.
I had a moment of like, were they afraid that they might get a PG rating, and this is part of how they made sure that they pushed it into PG-13?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure about that. But yeah, what else? What else did you like about this movie?
I loved the righteous librarian.
Oh my God, Miss Watkins, my queen.
Miss Watkins, played by, speaking of queens,
Cleo
King. Yes.
The King of Queens.
The King of Queens, very good. So there's actually a great debate that goes on amongst archivists and librarians of gloves versus no gloves.
Oh, yes.
Because, yes, of course you do not want, like, sweaty fingerprints all over your precious primary source documents. But at the same time, like, library gloves tend to fit almost all hands very poorly. And the fact that they do can make turning the pages very difficult and can actually increase the probability of somebody damaging the pages just by trying to turn them. And so there are some libraries that very strictly require gloves to go through their archives, and some that completely forego gloves. But the one thing that you can guarantee is that the librarian will be very adamant about whichever one her preference is. And so Miss Watkins is Team Gloves.
She certainly is.
And I appreciated her righteous fury on behalf of Team Gloves.
Yes, and she also, so there's a bit where they're looking at a dead article, an article that Lee Winnell was writing about the Bye-Bye Man that got killed.
Which I heard that and I was like, ooh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So he's reading this original draft of an article that never ran, and as he's I mean, this is a big kind of scare, maybe the scare set piece of the movie.
Yes.
Where he's crossing out the Bye-Bye Man's name kind of manically, and sees the
course,
Bye-Bye Man.
What? I was watching this and going, how dare you?
Yes.
You are defacing precious documents, sir.
And Miss Watkins arrives and says the same thing.
Exactly, yes.
She's truly, she is an angel walking on earth.
She is a librarian with a capital L, and I love her. And she's the real hero of this movie.
Yeah, and there's the
even after she kills her family.
Yeah, she does kill her family. It's the Bye-Bye Man curse. It's gonna happen. What are you gonna do? But when she's calling Elliot after having committed this sin, which is off screen, she's like, I think I need to come to your house and we need to talk about the Bye-Bye Man. And she has no reason to know where he lives, and that's why she's a good librarian. She's done the research.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She is much better at using the search function on her computer than Elliot is.
Oh, yeah, she uses the search engine titled Search.
Yes.
Which is one of the better fake search engines. I believe my favorite is the one that I believe is in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. It is called Gigablast. But Search is up there.
It's very straightforward. It just tells you exactly what it does.
Mm-hmm.
What else can you ask of something on the internet?
Exactly. And so many things like to conceal what they really are. And not so at Search.
They really do. What is DuckDuckGo? No, just give me Search.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I need. We already talked about this a little bit, but speaking of things that are written down, I really liked the aesthetics of the Don't Think It, Don't Say It artwork that apparently Lee Winnell is mostly responsible for.
Yeah, he has
throughout
scribbled
the course of this.
Yeah, all over his wall and carved it into the ceiling and various things like that.
Though it also becomes like this movie's version of all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah.
Because the characters scribble it down without even realizing they're doing so.
Yes, absolutely.
But they scribble it down in very artistic ways, which was another way that this reminded me of the Babadook a little bit.
Yeah, and this came out, 2 years after the Babadook kind of blew up? Maybe 3.
3 years,
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because Babadook was 2014.
Yes. So that's definitely kind of in the water at this time.
Yes. Very much so. There was a lamp with an upside-down chicken that I kind of want in my own house.
Excellent. I missed that.
You only start seeing it, late in the movie, and then it suddenly appears very distinctly in, I want to say the room where Sasha is lying down because she feels terrible. It's, next to her bed. So I think it's actually John's lamp.
Yeah.
Because she is in John's bed
as
at the time.
Would be.
So John has excellent taste in lamps. And then, finally, my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Hell yeah, okay.
Is when crazy hallucinating Elliot is in his car driving for some reason, even though he knows he's having hallucinations, and is just rocking out to this terrible cover of Bye Bye Love by the Everly Brothers.
Yep.
It is incredible.
It is incredible, and it's actually also a little unsettling because he's just so pale and strung out, and it could have been a really goofy needle drop because it's the Bye Bye Man and it's Bye Bye Love, but it really kind of it doesn't even feel that goofy because you're just like, oh, this is a lot for Elliot.
And also, it has been established that Elliot is into a particular kind of punk music for pretentious people. Based on the, and I love several of these bands, so I'm allowed to say that. But with his Joy Division and Dead Kennedys and Violent Femmes shirts that he wears throughout the movie, thank you, costume designer.
Very tight shirts, by the way. Also, thank you, costume designer.
Yes, also thank you, costume designer. You understand the assignment well in this regard. But remember, this has to be sincere praise. Like, I genuinely love this scene. I love that it is kind of unsettling. I love that the cover is terrible. It is apparently by the Newton brothers, who are responsible for the movie's score as well, and just decided to do some Everly Brothers there as well. Because the fact that it sounds very slightly, not very slightly, but it sounds off adds to the hallucinatory quality of the scene.
Oh, yeah.
Where at first I was like, oh, this is slower than the Simon and Garfunkel version that I know. Is this the actual Everly Brothers version? No, it can't be. It doesn't sound right. This isn't right. Nothing about this is right.
No, it's really not. And this is immediately before he sees Faye Dunaway on fire, so it's kind of building to that, I guess.
And it's like, you kind of laugh during this scene because it's ridiculous, but it's definitely a laughing in the dark kind of phenomenon.
Yeah. Wow. So did I get the indication that was the end of your list of, like, the things you wanted to really bring up?
Yes, so that is the end of my list. Before we transition into the reveal, do you have anything else to say, Brennan, about the Bye Bye Man?
Yeah, real quick, I wanted to point out my favorite scene, which is...
Yes, of course.
Yeah, Lucien LeViscount is talking to Carrie Ann Moss, who is the cop investigating the death of Kim. And he has a hallucination of her winking lasciviously at him, and he winks back. And then we cut back to real life, and she just gives him this incredibly confused look. She's just befuddled. And that's something I think about very often.
There are so... I will forget enormous chunks of Oscar-winning movies before I forget most of the scenes in The Bye Bye Man.
Yes, that's something that I wrote about in my Letterboxd review from rewatching this. I remember this movie so vividly in ways that I probably remember almost nothing of any other 2017 movie.
I'm sitting here going, what else came out in 2017?
Yeah.
Apparently it was just The Bye Bye Man.
It really was. It came out in January, really defined the year.
Yes.
But yeah, what I will say, The Bye Bye Man, in criticism from me, The Bye Bye Man's got a little bit too much going on. He's got too many signifiers. We've barely really talked about the dog, a terrible CGI dog that's like a fleshless hellhound. Mm-hmm. But he's got the dog, he's got the coin, he's got the like ghost train. He's got the don't think it, don't say it branding. He's got the nightstand. He's got like just all of these things, and he's got to follow the rule of like, before you leave the house, take off one accessory. Like, we just don't need quite as much as what we're being given here. And I will say, the realtor who sold them the house, his name is Mr. Daisy, and he runs a flower shop, which is so Lily Blossom Bloom coded. And that amuses me.
Yes. Thank you, Jonathan Petter, for your cameo there.
Yes. But yeah, and after spoiler alert, after Elliot kills his friends and then kills himself, we get a perspective of this from the outside of Michael Trucco outside the door, like, hey, yes, don't do what you're doing. But after all three of them are dead, there's this like glowing light inside the first floor of the house, as if a train is passing through. That is really eerie.
Is that what that was?
Yeah.
I thought they were trying to indicate that like the house was on fire, but no, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, it was the Biberman's train.
Because trains, for reasons, are apparently a Bye Bye Man thing. I
have the reasons because I read the chapter from which this is adapted.
There are reasons. Oh my goodness.
There are reasons. So this is incredibly loosely adapted. I'll try to get through this really quickly. Okay. The book is quite bad, or at least the chapter that I read. It's quite dry, and a lot of it is about like, here's the history of the Ouija board. But then it's like, here's a story from my friend from Madison, Wisconsin, and it's actually a better setup than the movie actually has.
Okay.
So John and Sasha and Eli is the name of Elliot in the book.
Okay.
And supposedly this really happened. But they were like actively experimenting, trying to study paranormal phenomena. And they were bored of these spirits they were contacting through the Ouija board. And the spirit of the board told them about this like evil entity. And they were like, yeah, let's contact that. And so that was kind of like, they invited that kind of to go on. But really what happened was like the spirit board told them the story of the Bye Bye Man. And then some vaguely creepy things happened, and John heard Sasha outside his door, but she wasn't really there. And then they stopped happening. And so the real life story just kind of ends, and like, oh, okay, great. Of course it did. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of absolute hokum. Spurious is a word that is too gentle to use for the claims extended by this chapter of this book, where he's like, the author's like looking into the background of where the Bye-Bye Man could have come from, and it's like, no, it's not even a local legend. It's just a thing that one guy got told by a Ouija board. So it's just, or I guess 3 people, but it's not like it's an established thing.
And then it gave them the willies for a couple days, and then the willies wore off.
Yeah, exactly. But supposedly the Bye-Bye Man, he is actually a living person or entity of some kind. He rides the rails. So he's basically this kind of albino murderer hobo character. And if you think his name or say his name, that kind of creates a telepathic link between you, and he will ride a train to get to you and then kill you.
Interesting. That is very inefficient, but okay.
Yeah.
He likes his trains.
He does. And the dog thing is also in the original story. The dog is named Gloomsinger.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Best dog name ever.
It's really good. And it is made out of the tongues and eyes of his victims.
Okay, I would not want to pet that dog, but still, Gloomsinger.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're getting there. But the actual story of the Bye-Bye Man and that thing that happened to them, it's like 3 pages out of like 60 pages of absolute hogwash.
Well, apparently Jonathan Penner and Stacey Tidal really connected with those 3 pages.
Yeah, but so they kind of spun it out into a complete story and kind of added stuff and made him less of a living figure, but they kept the train and did not explain it. But that's kind of where the train came from.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. Bye-Bye Man's riding in on a train. I guess we're seeing things from his perspective or something there.
Yeah, who the hell knows? But yes, that's what's going on there.
Very good. Okay, so we're going to transition into the reveal. What did I actually think of this movie? So we're going to do things a little bit different on this episode. Brennan's final job here is going to be try to guess what I actually thought of this. So we're going to do this in Letterboxd stars. So, Brennan, if I were being serious, how many stars do I actually give this movie?
Okay. I think we're kind of on the same page about it. So I feel like we're at the 2.5 range is what we're looking at. Where it's like not quite a great movie, but it's got stuff in it that's amusing or fun or whatever.
Okay, so what I have written down that I will attempt to show you now, so you know I'm not fudging it, is that I have 1.5 and a heart. Okay,
I'll accept it.
Yes.
I'll accept that for sure.
This is not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination. But I extremely, and this may just be because I went in with the attitude that I was going to like it, which I recommend this exercise for people. It makes watching movies a lot more fun, honestly. But I extremely disagree with the people who say this is not a fun watch. Because I had tremendous fun watching it.
I completely agree.
I do think that grimdark was not the correct tone to strike for this movie.
No.
And especially towards the end, they are trying really, really hard to do grubby and grimdark, and it does not work. Doug Jones is acting in a very different and much better silly horror movie than everybody else. Mm-hmm. And you can see it coming through in what counts as his performance, since he hardly gets to do anything other than kind of smile knowingly through his kind of terrible latex mask. This is not one of Doug Jones's better. This is not one of the better makeup jobs performed upon Doug Jones. But again, I do actually think that this is filling an important niche in the horror genre, because some 13-year-old, probably many 13-year-olds, went to see this in January 2017 with their friends and screamed a whole lot and had a really great time. And maybe later in life, that 13-year-old, who I guess is now like an older teenager, is a little bit embarrassed by that experience, but maybe has grown into another baby horror fan, possibly directly as a result of that experience.
Yeah. And I honestly, even though it's not good, I always gotta give credit to a female director who gets a big box horror movie out into the world. That takes tenacity. Hollywood does not want to let you do that. And Jonathan Penner and Stacey Title like kind of shoved the Bye Bye Man through the system and got it into theaters, and that's
they really
an
did, and
accomplishment.
I'm so glad that they did too, because tragically Stacey Title was diagnosed with ALS, I think during the filming of this movie, and died in 2021. So this was her last feature film. Yeah. And I think many people would consider this one a shameful one to go out on. I do not think it was. It seems like she made her last movie doing what she loved.
Yeah, it really does, because it's like, it's a meat and potatoes horror movie, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with making one of those, and there are sparks in it, and she got to, I don't know, like, it's tough learning about the backstory of Stacey Title.
It is,
but I'm very, very, I'm really grateful that Bye Bye Man exists. I have so much fun thinking about it and saying it.
Tim, in his review, which has my single favorite Tim Brayton line ever written. I'm not going to quote it here, but people should go and read his review, because I burst out laughing when I read the opening paragraph of it. He is correct that the Bye Bye Man is a really embarrassing name for a movie monster.
Yep.
And on the other hand, because I can't stop praising this stupid movie, apparently, because it's so dumb, you neither want to think it nor say it. Like, I've had actual trouble telling people the name of this movie because it's so dumb.
Yeah, and it also does sound like the dumb name that a local legend would have.
It does. Because local legends have, like, what kind of a name for a local legend is Slender Man? What does that mean?
Yeah, or like, and there's like always like Goat Man, and it's just always, they're not that creative.
No, there'll be like Hot Dog Man, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I'm glad we got to share this.
Me too. This has been delightful.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to get to follow Tim onto this brave new world of a podcast.
I am so glad that you did. So this has been great fun. Besides All Over Alternate Ending, Brennan, where can people find you if they want to hear more of your horror movie and other movie opinions?
Wow. Okay. I don't usually do this on Alternate Ending. I usually just point to Alternate Ending. But yeah, I mean, you can follow me on social media if you want at It's Raining Brens.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, whatever. My bosses are... I talked about this last time. My bosses are trying to make me post more, and it's almost working. I will post about music I like on Instagram. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, so... I also do a weekly box office roundup newsletter for Screen Rant. So every Sunday, you'll get to hear my most largely unvarnished opinions on what's going on at the box office. If you go to screenrant.com, sign up for newsletters and click box office. You can hear from me there, and that's my deal.
Fabulous. So everybody can do that. All right, that is our show. Please remember to subscribe to the full Alternate Ending podcast if you have not already, and consider joining us on Patreon. Patreon. Put the accent on the correct syllable, Mandy. Joining us on Patreon if you would like more of the delightful perks that we offer to our beloved followers. I will check in with you all next month with another movie that I love. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.